Ah, yes, it's that time of year again. That means we get to hear all about how we're not taxing the rich enough.
We are facing an inequality crisis. The gap between the super rich and the rest of us is huge and growing. In the last 10 years, the number of billionaires has doubled, whilst almost half of humanity struggles to survive on just $5.50 a day.
So let's take a look at this data and see what the data shows. Now, it looks like there's 3,300 billionaires on the planet, and they have a wealth roughly $11.8 trillion. Let's take that money from them. In fact, let's take all of it from them and give that 11.8 trillion to 4 billion people on the planet. That's almost $3,000, which in a year is an extra $8.08 a day. It's a lot of money, but there's also a lot of people. You're not going to tax your way to prosperity.
Around the world, people are taking to the streets to protest against inequality. Billionaires benefit from massive tax cuts, which mean paying lower rates of tax than the rest of us.
Paying less taxes. Well, let's take a look at this. Here's the income levels of the various groups in our economy. You have the 1%, you have the 5%, 10% to 25% to 50%, and then of course the bottom 50% of our economy. Now, if you look at this, it means that the top 1% makes 22% of all of the revenue. I will grant you, that is a lot of money, especially considering the bottom half only makes 10%. Now, I grant you, that is a large discrepancy, but what we're really talking about is, are the rich paying their fair share of taxes? Let's take a look at actually what their tax burden is. So let's look at the same IRS data, except now let's look at it as a percentage of income tax paid to the government. So the 1% is paying 42% of the federal income tax. And the bottom 50%, they're only paying 2%. So what does this mean? It means that for $1 out of every $5 in income, that income goes to the top 1%. But $2 out of every $5 going to the government in taxes is coming from that same 1%. In fact, the bottom 50%, which had 10% of the total income, they're really only paying 2% of the overall tax burden. Let's visualize this differently to make it much more obvious what's going on here. This is just a stat graph showing the income and tax with the groups in similar colors. Now let's take a look at this. The top 1% made 2.8 trillion, and the bottom 50% made 1.3 trillion. But let's look at that as far as tax burden goes. And you'll notice that the 2.8 trillion, they paid 723 billion in taxes. Now, sure, they are the group with the largest amount of income. But if you look, there's a 2.7 trillion group out there, as well as a 2.4 trillion group out there. And together, they paid 1/3 or 1/5, respectively, of the tax burden as paid by the 1%. They're making a lot of money. They're also paying dramatically more in taxes. And I think showing this as multiples makes it more clear. The top 1%, they may make 22% of the revenue, but they're paying 40% of the taxes. At the bottom of it, yeah, the bottom 50% only makes 10% of the revenue, but at the same time, they're only paying 2% of the overall tax. So the narrative has always been that the rich don't pay their fair share. Let me explain where that discrepancy comes from. It comes from two places. Number one, the rich often don't make income. They have investments. Those investments increase in value, but unless you sell that investment, it's not considered income. So you can be worth billions upon billions of dollars, but if you don't sell the shares that make you wealthy, that's not income. On the flip side, you have an even bigger lie, and it's the small businessman. You'll have a small businessman who makes $10 million a year in income, but pays taxes like he made $200,000. Let me explain how that happens. Yeah, sure, you make $10 million in revenue, but you have employees to pay for, you have supplies to pay for, you have rent, you have insurance, you have all the business expenses, which at the end of it easily racks up to $9.7 million, leaving you a profit or income, so to speak, of $300,000 to $200,000. And so, yeah, you're paying taxes as if you made $300,000 to $200,000. But the folks pushing the narrative that, oh, the rich don't pay their fair share of taxes, they'll phrase this as, look, someone made $10 million and only paid like taxes as if they made $200,000. The rich aren't paying their fair share. Well, yeah, because businesses have expenses, you dolt.
It's time to tax the richest more to fight inequality. Taxing wealth can ensure that every child gets to go to school, that no one lives in fear of the cost of getting sick, that we have the money to fight climate change.
I hope you realize we're already taxing the rich enough. And even if we did take away all their money, it's like an extra $8 a day for 4 billion people.
Tax the rich.
I'm not sure how you solve all of the world's ails by taxing the rich more than they already are.